In the dimly lit corridors of a small American hospital, where the buzz of fluorescent lights and the smell of antiseptic are always present, there is a quiet, almost unnoticeable tension building between two women. These two women are no strangers to hard work and long nights. They've seen the best and worst of human nature, day in and day out. The first woman, Mrs. Campbell, is in her mid-60s, her silver hair neatly tied back into a simple bun. She moves with the grace of someone who has spent decades walking these sterile hallways, never rushing, always composed. Her eyes, however, hold stories that only time can tell, stories of heartbreak, regret, wisdom, and quiet acceptance. She has seen it all. Her companion, Sophia, is a young woman in her mid-20s. She has the bright energy of youth, darting from one task to another, her hands moving quickly to check medical supplies, her mind always on the clock. She has that youthful optimism, the kind that believes in the goodness of others and in the power of love. But tonight, as she prepares for another grueling night shift, there's something in her demeanor that betrays a subtle nervousness, an undercurrent of doubt she cannot quite shake. As they work side by side, their conversation drifts from the mundane medical supplies, the never-ending list of shifts and duties, to something far more personal. Mrs. Campbell, in her gentle, knowing way, leans in and asks, "How are things with Lucas?" Her voice is light, but there's an edge to it, a hint of something unspoken. The question hangs in the air, and for a moment, Sophia hesitates. At the mention of Lucas, Sophia's face lights up. Her smile radiates warmth and excitement as she begins to tell Mrs. Campbell about him. "Oh, it's wonderful," she says, her eyes sparkling with hope. "He's planned a weekend getaway for us next month. I can't wait. It'll be perfect." Her words are full of hope, but there's a quiet tremor beneath them, a vulnerability she tries hard to mask as she talks. Mrs. Campbell watches her, her face softening, yet there's a shadow in her eyes that Sophia doesn't see. Mrs. Campbell's expression shifts just slightly, her lips curving into a knowing smile, but her eyes hold a deeper understanding. "My dear," she begins, her voice dropping to a whisper, "I've seen many young hearts make the same mistake. I fear this joy of yours may be fleeting." Sophia stops for a moment, the words hitting her harder than she expected. Her brow furrows, a flicker of irritation creeping into her expression. "Mrs. Campbell," she replies, her voice almost defensive, "I thought you, of all people, would be happy for me." There's an almost childlike frustration in her voice, as if she wants to believe so badly that everything is perfect, that love is enough. But Mrs. Campbell's words have a weight that refuses to be ignored. Mrs. Campbell, wise and weathered by years of watching the world around her, reaches out gently, her hand warm against Sophia's. "I am happy for you, Sophia. But I've walked this earth long enough to see the signs. Lucas, bless his heart, isn't your equal. His world, his class, they're miles apart from where you stand." Sophia laughs, her voice ringing out in the sterile silence of the hallway. It's a clear, bright sound that seems almost out of place in this cold, clinical environment. "Mrs. Campbell, we live in modern times. Love isn't about class or status anymore," she says, shaking her head with an air of disbelief. But Mrs. Campbell doesn't waver. "History often repeats itself, my dear," she replies, her tone softer now, but still full of the weight of experience. "And often, it's not the big things that tear us apart. It's the little differences, the small gaps, that widen into chasms too vast to cross." Sophia pauses for a moment, her laughter fading, replaced by a lingering unease. She looks at Mrs. Campbell, unsure of how to respond. The older woman's words, though cloaked in wisdom, sting a little too much. She knows Mrs. Campbell is right, and yet she refuses to believe it. But then, as if to shift the focus away from her growing discomfort, Sophia turns to Mrs. Campbell with a new urgency in her eyes. Her voice softens, taking on a more confessional tone. "There's something I haven't told anyone else yet," she says, lowering her voice as if sharing a secret. "Lucas and I, we're expecting a child." The room seems to pause for a moment. Mrs. Campbell's face remains composed, but her heart skips a beat. She has seen it before, young women filled with hope, the joy of new life in their eyes, and yet the reality of what's to come is often far different from the dreams they hold. She takes a moment to process the news, the weight of it settling into the space between them. After what feels like an eternity, Mrs. Campbell regains her composure and speaks carefully. "How did Lucas react?" she asks, her voice professional, yet tinged with concern. Sophia's smile falters. "He doesn't know yet," she admits, her voice barely above a whisper. "I wanted to tell him during the getaway. I thought it would be special, a moment just for us." Mrs. Campbell's heart tightens. She's seen enough to know that this news could be the beginning of a very different story than the one Sophia envisions. She knows that Lucas, despite his charm, has never been the type to truly commit to anything, let alone the responsibility of fatherhood, but she doesn't say this. Instead, she takes a breath and says, "That sounds like a beautiful plan, Sophia. A child is a blessing, and who knows, maybe this news will be the making of Lucas. People can surprise us." Sophia's smile returns, but it's softer now, as if she's clinging to Mrs. Campbell's words, hoping against hope that they're true. "Thank you," she says, her eyes glistening with tears of mixed emotions. "I really hope you're right. I want this to bring us closer together." And with that, the conversation fades, but the weight of what's been said lingers in the air. Mrs. Campbell watches Sophia walk away, her heart heavy with the knowledge of what's to come. She hopes she's wrong, but experience has taught her that hope alone is never enough. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Sophia's world and the delicate balance of love, trust, and family, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more stories that will make you think, reflect, and connect. Your support keeps us going and fuels our passion to bring you more thought-provoking content. Quick reflection question: do you believe love can overcome the differences in background and class? A yes. Love can conquer all challenges. B no, differences in background are too vast to ignore. Comment your answer below and let's see what you think. Sophia's heart raced as she stood by the window of their apartment, looking out at the busy city streets below. The world outside seemed to carry on in its usual pace, unaware of the turmoil brewing inside her. She held her hands over her growing belly, the news of her pregnancy both a joy and a weight she could hardly carry on her own. She had planned for this moment, dreamed of it even, but now that it was here, nothing felt as she imagined. The excitement that once surged within her when she first saw those two pink lines on the test had faded, replaced by annoying anxiety. Her thoughts kept drifting back to the conversation with Mrs. Campbell just days earlier. She had confided in the older woman, trusting that Mrs. Campbell's decades of experience would offer some sort of clarity, but instead, she was left with more doubts than answers. "Lucas isn't your equal," Mrs. Campbell had said. "His world, his class, they're miles apart from where you stand." At the time, Sophia had dismissed it, assuring herself that love was supposed to overcome such barriers. But now, standing in her apartment, her hands on her belly, she wasn't so sure anymore. Sophia had always believed in love's ability to conquer any obstacle. She had grown up watching her mother, Monica, struggle with bad relationships and yet, somehow always finding a way to keep going. She believed that love, if strong enough, could push through any darkness. Lucas was charming, successful, and he seemed to care for her. When they first met, she had felt something deep inside her, a connection that made her believe in the impossible. He seemed perfect, the kind of man a woman like her could build a future with. But now, everything seemed different. The night before, Sophia had shared the news of the pregnancy with him. She had hoped for joy, for excitement, for a sense of togetherness. Instead, she was met with confusion, hesitation, and even a sense of distance she hadn't noticed before. "Are you sure?" Lucas had asked, his voice unsure, his eyes distant. "You've taken multiple tests, right?" His words felt more like an interrogation than a moment of shared joy. He wasn't angry, but there was a coldness in his tone that made her heart ache. "I'm sure," she had replied, forcing a smile, trying to mask the hurt. "I thought we could share this news on our getaway, make it special," but even as the words left her mouth, she felt the weight of uncertainty pressing down on her. The getaway, meant to be a celebration, had become a turning point in their relationship, a moment of truth neither of them had expected. Lucas had been distant for weeks, caught up in his own world, consumed by work and the pressures of his life. Sophia had tried to ignore the signs, telling herself it was just temporary. He had promised they would make time for each other, that things would settle down. But now, standing at the crossroads of their lives, she couldn't deny the cracks that had begun to show. His reaction to the pregnancy felt like the final confirmation she had been avoiding. Lucas wasn't ready, but the real question was he ever going to be? As the days passed, Sophia found herself alone more often than not, her mind racing with questions she couldn't answer. She had hoped Lucas would be there for her, that he would embrace the life they were about to create together. But the more she thought about it, the more she realized that maybe she had been living in a fantasy. Maybe she had been so blinded by love that she hadn't seen the truth all along. Lucas had always been more focused on his career, on building his empire, than on building a future with her. She had wanted to believe that he would change, that he would rise to the occasion when faced with the responsibility of fatherhood. But what if he didn't? What if she had been wrong about everything? She tried to reach out to him again, hoping for some sort of reassurance, but his responses were cold and distant. The few texts he sent were brief and impersonal, as if he were too busy to truly engage. "I need time to think," he had written. The words stung more than she expected. Time to think. What did that even mean? He hadn't even been there for the important moments, the ones that mattered most. And now, when she needed him more than ever, he was retreating into his own world, leaving her to figure out everything on her own. Sophia's feelings of isolation deepened. She had always believed that love was supposed to bring two people together, that it was supposed to make them stronger. But now, standing at the precipice of a future she hadn't anticipated, she felt more alone than ever. She was about to become a mother, and yet, she wasn't sure if she could count on the man she loved to be there for her when it mattered most. The future she had imagined with Lucas, a future filled with love, security, and shared dreams, was beginning to feel like a distant memory, a dream that would never come true. In the midst of all this uncertainty, a part of her still clung to hope. Maybe things would change. Maybe Lucas would come around, would realize the importance of family and the responsibility that came with it. But as the days stretched into weeks, Sophia couldn't ignore the growing realization that hope alone was not enough. She needed more than hope. She needed a partner, someone who was ready to stand by her, someone who was willing to face the challenges of life together. But where was Lucas in all of this? Why was he so reluctant to take on this responsibility? And more importantly, what did that mean for their future? As Sophia stared at the empty space in front of her, her mind raced, trying to make sense of the mess she found herself in. She had dreamed of a family, a future with the man she loved. But now, with the weight of the pregnancy pressing down on her, she was starting to realize that the future she had hoped for might never come to pass. The pain of this realization was sharp, but it also pushed her towards something else, something stronger, something more certain. She wasn't sure yet what that something was, but she knew that she couldn't keep waiting for Lucas to change. She couldn't keep holding on to a dream that wasn't meant to be. As the days passed, Sophia began to come to terms with the reality of her situation. She was going to have a child, and whether Lucas was ready or not, she would face the challenges of motherhood on her own. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but it was hers to walk. And for the first time, Sophia felt the weight of responsibility in a way she hadn't before. She wasn't just carrying a child, she was carrying her future. The pain of uncertainty still lingered, but Sophia was learning to accept that not everything in life could be controlled. Some things had to be let go. Some dreams had to be surrendered, and in the quiet moments of reflection, she realized that she might just be strong enough to build a new future for herself and her child. Lucas might not be ready to step up, but Sophia was ready to take the first step into the unknown, to face the challenges ahead, and to create a future filled with the love and security she had always dreamed of on her own terms. Sophia sat nervously on the edge of the bed, the cool evening air brushing against the open window. Her heart was pounding in her chest, each beat a reminder of the weight of what she was about to share. She had been preparing for this moment for days, weeks, really, but now that it was here, she wasn't sure if she was ready. The small, innocent life growing inside her felt both like a gift and a burden, and the man she had once believed was her partner, her future, was the one person she wasn't sure she could trust with it. Lucas, with his easy charm and effortless smile, had always been the kind of man who seemed to glide through life. He had a way of making everything look simple, even when it wasn't, But Sophia had learned, over the course of their relationship, that simplicity was often just an illusion. Beneath his confident exterior, there were cracks ones she had refused to see, even when Mrs. She was beginning to realize just how much she had ignored in the name of love. The door creaked open, and Lucas stepped inside, his usual energy filling the room. He was wearing his signature white shirt, sleeves rolled up to his elbows, a look that screamed both professionalism and ease. He flashed a smile at her, and for a moment, she allowed herself to believe everything would be fine. But then, her stomach tightened, the moment had arrived, and no amount of preparation could make it easier. "Hey," he said, walking over to her and leaning down to kiss her forehead. "You ready for the weekend? I've got everything planned. This is going to be great." "Just you and me." His voice was light, casual, and for a moment, Sophia's heart skipped a beat. He was excited, he didn't know yet. Taking a deep breath, she gently grabbed his hand and placed it on her belly. She watched his face closely as his hand brushed against the slight curve, feeling the weight of what she was about to say settle between them. "Lucas, I have something to tell you," she began, her voice shaky, but determined. "I'm pregnant." There was a brief silence. His hand remained on her belly, unmoving, and Sophia felt a chill run through her. She couldn't quite read the expression on his face: confusion, hesitation, something else. The seconds stretched long between them, each one heavier than the last. Finally, Lucas pulled his hand back, stepping back just slightly. "Wait, what? Pregnant?" His voice was thick with disbelief, and Sophia could hear the confusion in his tone. "Are you sure?" Sophia nodded, trying to steady her racing heartbeat. "Yes, I'm sure. I've taken several tests. They all came back positive. We're having a baby." Lucas stood there, silent for a moment, his brow furrowed. He looked at her, his eyes scanning her face as if searching for something. Sophia could feel the weight of his gaze, the expectation that he would say something, anything to make this feel real, but all he did was frown. His gaze dropped to the floor, and the silence between them grew heavier. After what felt like an eternity, he cleared his throat and finally spoke. I need some time to think about this." His words were slow, measured, and completely lacking the warmth Sophia had hoped for. It wasn't anger, it wasn't even disappointment. It was simply nothing. He wasn't reacting in the way she had imagined, a moment of joy, of excitement. Instead, it felt like he was processing information, as if he were deciding whether or not this was something he could deal with. Sophia's stomach dropped. "Lucas, what do you mean?" "You're going to be a father. We're going to be parents. This is big." Lucas looked at her, his face still unreadable. I know, but it's a lot. It's a huge responsibility, Sophia." His voice was quieter now, almost distant, and the way he said responsibility made it sound like a burden, not a blessing. "We've been together for a while, but this is a life-altering change. I'm not sure I'm ready for it." Sophia felt a lump form in her throat. This was not what she had expected. This was not what she had dreamed of. She had imagined their first baby as a moment of connection, of love, not a moment of fear and doubt. She had believed in Lucas. She had believed in their future together. But now, as she looked at him, she realized that maybe she had been wrong. "This isn't about being ready, Lucas," she said, her voice breaking. "We're in this together now. This is happening. Whether we're ready or not." Her eyes filled with tears, but she refused to let them fall. She had to be strong now. "I need you. This baby needs you." He turned away, running a hand through his hair. "Sophia, I don't know if I'm the right person for this. I don't know if I'm ready to be a father. I didn't plan for this. I've got so much going on. My career, my future, all of this is just..." His voice trailed off, and Sophia could see the panic in his eyes. She had seen it before, in small glimpses, the fear of being trapped, of losing control, but never like this, never so raw. Her heart shattered. She had always thought that love would be enough. She had believed that they could build a future together, that no obstacle was too great for them to overcome. But now, as she stood in front of him, she realized that maybe love alone couldn't solve everything. Maybe love couldn't erase the fears and insecurities that Lucas carried with him. And maybe, just maybe, Lucas wasn't the man she had hoped he would be. Lucas, "You don't have to be perfect," she whispered, her voice shaking with emotion. "I'm not perfect either, but we can do this. We can figure it out together." He didn't answer. Instead, he turned away from her completely, walking toward the window. He didn't look back. "I just need time, Sophia. I need time to think. I don't know if I can do this right now." Sophia felt the tears finally fall, hot and fast down her cheeks. She had imagined this moment so differently. She had thought Lucas would be there, by her side, ready to face the unknown together. But now, standing alone in their apartment, she realized that maybe she had been foolish to expect anything different. Lucas wasn't ready, and deep down, she wasn't sure if he ever would be. As she stood there, the weight of her pregnancy pressing down on her, Sophia realized that she had to face the reality of her situation. Lucas might never be the father she had hoped for. But that didn't mean she couldn't be the mother her child needed. It didn't mean she couldn't build a life for herself, with or without him. The road ahead was uncertain, filled with doubt and fear, but one thing was clear: she had a child to protect, a future to build. And no matter what Lucas decided, she would face it with strength, because that was all she had left now. The days after Lucas left her apartment felt like a blur, each one stretching endlessly into the next. Sophia found herself walking through the motions, her body still moving, but her mind and heart somewhere far away. She had thought that their love was strong enough to weather any storm, that the bond they shared would overcome any obstacle. But now, she was left standing in the wreckage of her own hopes and dreams, unsure of how to pick up the pieces. It was as if Lucas had disappeared, both physically and emotionally. His absence left a hollow space in her life, one that she couldn't fill no matter how hard she tried. The texts stopped coming. The phone calls ceased. He had become a ghost in her world, someone she had loved deeply, but who now seemed like a distant memory. Every time she reached out to him, hoping for even the smallest sign of care, all she received were empty responses or, worse yet, complete silence. She couldn't make sense of it. What hurt the most was the feeling of abandonment. The pain wasn't just about losing him. It was about the future they had dreamed of together gone in an instant. She had been ready to build a family with him, to face the challenges of parenthood side by side. But now, as the weight of her pregnancy pressed on her, she was left alone in a world that suddenly felt colder, more isolating. She spent her days walking the hospital halls, her hands busy with the small tasks of being an orderly, but her mind was elsewhere. She tried to focus on the patients, on the work she had once loved, but it was hard to keep her mind from drifting back to Lucas, to the empty apartment that awaited her every evening. She had hoped he would come around, that his coldness was just a temporary reaction, but as the days turned into weeks, she began to accept a painful truth. Lucas wasn't coming back. The reality of her situation sank in deeper with each passing day. She was pregnant, alone, and facing a future she hadn't planned for. The woman who had once been full of hope and optimism found herself questioning everything. She had been so sure that love would make it all work out, but now she wasn't sure of anything. She wasn't sure if Lucas loved her the way she had believed, and she wasn't sure if she had the strength to face the challenges ahead without him. It was in the midst of this emotional turmoil that she decided to return home, to the small town she had tried so hard to escape. She hadn't spoken to her mother, Monica, in years, not since she had left for the city, determined to make a name for herself, to prove that she was capable of building a life on her own. But now, as the weight of her situation became too much to bear, she realized that she needed to be with family. She needed the comfort and security that only a mother's embrace could provide. Monica had always been there for her, even when Sophia was too stubborn to see it. She had raised Sophia on her own, struggling through the hardships of life, always doing her best to provide for her daughter. Sophia had never truly appreciated her mother's sacrifices until she had left home, only to discover that the world outside wasn't as kind or forgiving as she had imagined. The journey back to the town was long and quiet. Sophia stared out of the bus window, watching the landscape change as she neared her childhood home. The familiar sights, the old gas station, the park where she used to play, brought back a flood of memories. She hadn't realized how much she missed this place until now, how much she had left behind in her pursuit of a different life. When she arrived at the small house where she had grown up, it felt like stepping back in time. The house looked the same as it had when she left, its faded paint and creaky door familiar in a way that was both comforting and unsettling. Sophia stood on the doorstep for a moment, unsure of what to expect. She had spent so many years trying to escape this place, but now it was all she had left. Monica answered the door, her face lighting up when she saw her daughter. The years had been kind to her hair streaked with silver, her face soft with age, but her eyes were still the same, full of love, full of strength. "Sophia," she said, her voice thick with emotion, "I didn't think you'd come back." Sophia stepped into her mother's arms, feeling the warmth and safety she had been longing for. He had come here seeking comfort, but she hadn't realized just how much she needed to be held, how much she needed her mother's reassurance. For a moment, she allowed herself to break down, to let the tears flow freely, to release the pain and the confusion that had built up inside her over the past few weeks. As they sat together, Monica listened to everything Sophia had been through: the breakup with Lucas, the overwhelming fear of facing motherhood alone, the isolation that had crept into her life. Monica didn't offer solutions or judgments. She simply listened, offering words of comfort when needed. "You're not alone, sweetheart," she said softly. "You'll always have me." Sophia didn't realize how much she had missed her mother's support until now. She had been so determined to make it on her own, to prove that she didn't need anyone. But now, in the quiet of her mother's living room, she realized that she had been running from the very thing that had always been her safety net: family. Monica's love was a steady anchor in a world that had felt like it was spinning out of control. In the days that followed, Sophia began to find herself again. With her mother's help, she started to process the reality of her situation. She didn't have all the answers, but she had a sense of peace she hadn't felt in weeks. She knew that her life had taken an unexpected turn, but she also knew that she was strong enough to handle whatever came next. Monica, ever the practical one, reminded her that life would continue, regardless of what had happened. She encouraged Sophia to take things one step at a time, to focus on the present instead of the future. "You don't need to have everything figured out right now," Monica said. "Just take it one day at a time, you'll find your way." Sophia took those words to heart. She knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. She knew there would be difficult days when she felt overwhelmed and unsure of herself. But she also knew that she wasn't alone anymore. She had her mother, and she had herself. Returning home had been a step she hadn't expected to take, but it had been the step that saved her. It had given her the strength to face her fears, to confront the reality of her situation, and to start building a new life. It wasn't the life she had imagined, but it was her life, and that was enough. As Sophia settled into her childhood home, she realized that sometimes the only way forward is to return to where it all began, to seek the love and support that only family can provide. And in that moment, she knew that no matter what happened next, she had a foundation to stand on, one that would carry her through whatever challenges lay ahead. Sophia sat by the window of her mother's home, the soft light of the morning sun streaming through the curtains, casting a gentle glow on the room. Her mind felt clearer now than it had in weeks. The storm inside her had calmed, and while the storm's remnants still lingered in the back of her mind, there was a sense of peace she hadn't expected to find. The past months had been a whirlwind of confusion and heartbreak, but sitting here now, Sophia could feel herself becoming someone new. In the silence of the moment, with the sound of her mother humming softly in the kitchen, Sophia realized that her journey was far from over, but it was hers to shape. The road ahead was unclear, the future uncertain, but for the first time, she felt like she was no longer just waiting for things to happen. She was ready to move forward, to embrace her own strength, and to find the life she had longed for all along. It wasn't just about the baby anymore, it was about her own transformation. When she had first found out she was pregnant, she had seen it as a burden. A weight that would tie her down, that would prevent her from living the life she had imagined. She had imagined Lucas by her side, the two of them raising their child together, creating a family. But now, as she reflected on it all, she realized that the life she had imagined was built on an illusion. She had wanted someone to share her dreams with, to walk beside her, to build a future together. But she had learned the painful lesson that sometimes People couldn't give you what you needed, no matter how much you loved them. It wasn't Lucas's failure that had hurt the most. It was the realization that she had failed herself, too. She had placed all her hopes and dreams on a man who wasn't ready to commit, on a relationship that wasn't built on the foundation she needed. She had ignored the signs, convinced herself that love could overcome everything. But love alone was never enough. Love needed action, dedication, and a willingness to face the hard truths. And Lucas, despite his charm, had not been willing to do that. But now, Sophia had learned to face those truths. She had learned to look at her life with a clear, unclouded vision. She was going to be a mother, and she didn't need anyone else to complete her. The realization came with a certain sadness, a recognition of the dreams she had to let go of. But there was a quiet strength in that sadness, a strength that Sophia had never known before. She wasn't waiting for Lucas to change anymore. She wasn't waiting for anyone to change. She was ready to embrace her own life, to build her own future. The journey ahead was daunting. There would be days when fear would creep back in, when doubts would cloud her thoughts, but those moments were no longer paralyzing. They were simply part of the process. As she moved forward, she began to see that she could still find joy, still find purpose in her life, even without the fairy tale she had once envisioned. Sophia thought of her mother, Monica, who had always been a source of strength, even in the darkest moments of her life. Monica had raised her on her own, never once complaining, never once showing weakness. Sophia had spent so many years thinking she could never be like her mother, that she could never live up to the strength and resilience Monica had shown. But now, as she sat in her mother's home, she understood. She understood that her mother's strength wasn't something she had to emulate. It was something that lived inside of her, too. It was in the quiet moments with her mother, as they shared meals, as they talked about the past, that Sophia began to realize her own potential. She was becoming the woman she had always needed to be. She wasn't just waiting for a man to define her. She wasn't waiting for someone to give her permission to be strong, to be confident. She was strong, just as she was. As the days passed, Sophia began to explore her own interests again. She had always dreamed of working in healthcare, of helping others, but it was a dream that had always been overshadowed by the fear of failure, by the belief that she wasn't good enough. But now, with her mother's encouragement, Sophia began to see that she didn't have to be perfect. She didn't have to have it all figured out. She just had to start, and so she did. She applied for a position at the local nursing home, unsure of what to expect, but driven by the desire to take control of her life. The interview was brief, but there was something about the woman who spoke to her warmth, her genuine interest in Sophia's past experience that made Sophia feel like she belonged there, like she could actually make a difference. And when the call came a few days later, offering her the job, Sophia felt a surge of pride. It wasn't a perfect job, it wasn't her dream job. But it was a step in the right direction, and for the first time in a long time, Sophia felt like she was moving forward. But it wasn't just about the job, it was about the person she was becoming. The person who was no longer defined by her relationship with Lucas, no longer defined by the dreams of a family that had never come to fruition. She was becoming someone who was proud of herself, who could stand on her own 2 feet and face the challenges of life with a sense of strength and purpose. And then, there was Tom. He had been a stranger when they first met, just a kind man who had helped her when she returned to town. But over the past few weeks, something had shifted between them. Tom had been there for her in ways that Lucas never had. He had listened, not just to her words, but to the fears and hopes that she had kept hidden for so long. He had shown her that it was possible to build a connection based on trust, based on mutual respect, without the weight of unrealistic expectations. Sophia wasn't ready to jump into another relationship. She wasn't sure if she ever would be. But there was something comforting about Tom's presence in her life, something grounding. He had been through his own struggles, and somehow, that made him the kind of person Sophia could relate to. He wasn't perfect, and neither was she. But together, they had begun to build something new, something real. As the weeks turned into months, Sophia began to see her life in a new light. The fear, the uncertainty, the pain of the past, it all faded into the background as she focused on the future, on the life she was building for herself and her child. There would still be challenges ahead, still moments of doubt, but Sophia knew that she was ready. She was ready to face whatever came her way, because she knew now that she was enough. The journey had been long, and the road ahead would still be difficult, but for the first time, Sophia felt like she was walking it with confidence. She had found her strength, her voice, and she knew that no matter what happened next, she would be okay. She was no longer waiting for someone else to fix her life. She was taking control, one step at a time, and with that, she moved forward. Life, much like a river, has a way of carrying us through unexpected currents, forcing us to confront the truth about ourselves, others, and the world we live in. When we are young, we often believe that love, ambition, and determination can shape the course of our future without question. We are conditioned to think that if we work hard enough, if we hope enough, the universe will align to give us what we desire. But reality, as it often does, challenges us in ways we never anticipated, and this can leave us feeling vulnerable, unsure, and at times lost. Sophia's journey is one that many of us can relate to, whether through our relationships, our personal growth, or our search for happiness. She started with a vision of a perfect future with Lucas, the man she thought she would build a life with. But as the story unfolded, she realized that the foundation of her hopes was not as secure as she had believed. Lucas, despite all his charm, could not meet her where she needed him to be. And in that painful realization, Sophia had no choice but to face herself. In the beginning, Sophia's sense of self-worth was tied to the love of another, to the idea of family and companionship. She believed that if she had the love of Lucas, she could conquer the world. But when that love wasn't enough to keep their relationship strong, when Lucas retreated into his own world, Sophia was forced to rediscover herself. This was a turning point not just in her relationship with Lucas, but in her relationship with herself. She learned that she was not defined by someone else's actions, not by what she thought she could have, but by who she chose to be in the face of adversity. The greatest lesson Sophia learned was that strength does not always come from external sources. It comes from within. True strength is not about remaining unaffected by life's challenges. It is about allowing yourself to feel the pain, the sorrow, the confusion, and still finding the courage to move forward. She could have chosen to remain stuck in the idea of what could have been, to hold on to the man who couldn't give her what she needed, but instead, she chose to move forward, to take control of her life and build a future for herself and her child. It was only when Sophia embraced her independence, when she stopped waiting for Lucas to change, stopped hoping that love would be enough, that she found the freedom to truly live her life. By returning to her roots, to the unconditional love of her mother, she rediscovered her inner strength and purpose. Her journey is a powerful reminder that we are not defined by the people we love, or by the people who choose not to love us. We are defined by our ability to adapt, to grow, and to continue moving forward, no matter the obstacles in our way. This story teaches us the invaluable lesson that the only person we can truly rely on in life is ourselves. The people around us, though important, will come and go, and they may not always meet our expectations. But we must never place our worth in the hands of others. Our value is inherent. It is in the way we choose to face life's difficulties, in how we stand tall when the world knocks us down. So, how can we apply this lesson in our own lives? First, we must acknowledge that life is unpredictable, and it's okay to feel uncertain, even scared. But we must never allow those feelings to paralyze us. In moments of hardship, whether in relationships, career challenges, or personal struggles, we must remember that we have the power to make choices. We are not victims of our circumstances, we are agents of change in our own lives. Next, we must remember that growth comes from within. We don't need to rely on others to define us or to validate our worth. The strength to overcome challenges comes from self-awareness and self-acceptance. We must be willing to embrace who we are, flaws and all, and trust that we have the ability to navigate the complexities of life.
The power to change our story lies within us, and once we realize that, we can move forward with confidence and resilience. Finally, we must recognize the importance of taking responsibility for our own happiness. Waiting for someone else to make us happy, to fulfill our needs, only leads to disappointment. Happiness, fulfillment, and success are not products of other people's actions.
They are the result of our own decisions and the way we choose to respond to life's challenges. As we reflect on this, I invite you to take a moment and ask yourself, what is the one thing in your life that you're relying on someone else to change or fix? What would happen if you took responsibility for it yourself? I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Please take a moment to comment below with your perspective. How have you taken responsibility for your own happiness and growth? Your story might just inspire someone else to take that first step towards their own transformation. If you've found value in this story and the lessons shared, please subscribe to our channel and consider making a small donation to support the content that helps us grow together. I'm getting older, and my time is precious, but I want to dedicate it to sharing wisdom that can make a difference in people's lives. Your support, whether big or small, encourages me to keep creating these valuable insights for you. Every bit of encouragement counts. Thank you for being part of this journey.